Welcome to Out with Dan, the podcast that spotlights and examines the voices of LGBTQ+ authors, characters, and our allies. Together, we lift our voices and we tell our stories. I'm Dan White. Join me as I chat with this week's author. Hello and welcome back to Out with Dan. Today I'm excited to talk to Chad Beguelin about Showmance. Welcome, Chad.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Chad is a 6-time Tony Award nominee, and he's worked in The Prom, Disney's Aladdin, Elf, The Wedding Singer, and you're also the co-writer of the script for The Prom, which is a movie on Netflix. Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, that's fantastic. You're a man about everywhere, on television, on stage, and now I'm an author.
So, you got to do something with your time.
Well, it's a wonderful trifecta. So let's give the audience an overview about what Showmance is about.
Well, Showmance is about a failed Broadway writer who gets talked into directing his flop show at his small podunk hometown community theater. And he does so begrudgingly, and he sort of writes everyone off as a bunch of hicks and amateurs. But then they start making all these really insightful changes to the musical. And so he has to sort of rethink his attitude. And he also keeps running into his high school nemesis, who is everywhere and also gorgeous. So then things might get a little spicy. Don't want to spoil too much.
Fantastic. So now I'm gonna poke right at the bear. So I know that you came from a small town in Illinois. I came from a small town in eastern North Carolina. Both of us moved away to big cities. And so was your attitude anywhere similar to Noah's when you would return home to begin with?
I mean, I wasn't as awful, but I loved the community theater that I grew up in, and they, much like Noah, welcomed me with open arms and let me, at the age of 15, write and direct and produce anything I wanted. They were just wonderfully supportive, and so I think I feel a lot more warmth towards them than Noah does. But, for dramatic purposes, I had to give him a flaw, and I had to give him, a room to grow. So I hope I'm not a complete tool like Noah is sometimes. But, they could prove me wrong. You could ask them.
Now I'm going to have to be a little honest, and I probably will wish I had not been. But I will say that I had some of the same conceptions or perceptions that Noah had about where he came from. I think that when you grow up as a queer child and you have experiences, we often romanticize or demonize our experiences as we age because we oftentimes know what we felt, those emotions, and then we exaggerate them as adults. And so I saw some of myself in Noah, and I don't think I was very proud of that reflection I saw, but I certainly understood it because I think sometimes, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, I think sometimes when you grow up in a small place and you have dreams and aspirations of living in the big city, you see life a little differently than some of maybe your friends and family. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there is also something about, being a queer kid and being bullied, and that you create this hard shell around yourself because you have to. And, if you can't fight with your fists, you learn how to fight with your words. And that's sort of, I think that's what sort of happened to Noah. And I know it definitely happened to me. I remember, after a few years after college, I was in therapy because, I'm crazy. And, the therapist, we were talking about it, she said, you could probably put your dukes down now. And I thought, think of it, okay, you can put your dukes down. The fight, the threat is gone. So I think that really, influenced, why he has such a hard exterior.
And I do want, for the audience, I want them to understand that any of my comments I'm not making Noah the worst person on earth, but I do agree with you. I think that when you've been bullied, you do build a shell around yourself, and it's a shell for protection. And then sometimes in life, and I know I am guilty of this as well. Here we are in the mirror again. I'm probably going to wish I wasn't there, but I have been a bully in my life because I was taught well by bullies in high school.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was talking to an author the other day that said, you know, when you're a queer kid and you're bullied, it's an unusual thing in the fact that your bully is actually right.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very eye-opening way to look at it, that, you know, most of the time with bullying, there is a bit of truth to why the person is bullying you. They're just jockeying for power. And then I think when you go into an artistic endeavor, like you've been on Broadway, you've co-written a screenplay for Netflix, you know, there's a lot of competition in those type of creative worlds. And there again, that shell we build around ourselves is there for a good reason, because there's a lot of rejection in the creative world.
Absolutely. And yeah, you have to, you're right. That's another, it's sort of another place where you have to be really tough and, you know, have a thick skin.
Yes, yes. So let's talk about this show. And I love the fact that you did give his homecoming a lot of warmth. You know, I just fell in love with Noah's mom. I mean, you know, everyone needs Noah's mom. The only sad thing is I can't believe you gave him a mom that was a bad cook.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. She's based, my mom's name is actually Nancy Kay, and she's based, you know, on my mom. And I gave her the first draft to read. And I said, you know, I can change her name if you're, and she's like, no, I'd love it. But we joke with my mom all the time because she owns it. She's the worst cook in the world. And in grade school, people in the neighborhood, kids in the neighborhood would call her the hot dog lady because you only ask for hot dogs because that's all she can do. So yeah, and the crock pot pizza is real. It is a real
Holy cow.
thing. Yes.
Oh.
So all of those recipes and those are things we've all suffered through. And she's great about it though. She laughs about it. And, but yeah, she's and like my mom, who seems very sort of, you know, you just every once in a while she'll, you know, out of the blue say something that'll just stop you in your tracks, and something very profound, and you know, you just never expect it. So yeah, I think especially because Noah has such a strained relationship with his father, I wanted to sort of build a relationship with the mother. So it's not that she's overcompensating, but just, you know, that she's, you know, knows that he's not going to get what he thinks he wants from his dad, you know. So I think she's there for him in that way.
And you gave him a mother that is both loving and kind, and she really does love Noah. And I agree with you. I didn't find her to be overcompensating. I found her to be just the mother people would really like to have. Maybe not on the gourmet side, but on the other side. I mean, my mom used to say that when I came home, she's like, why in the hell would I cook for you? We can go out to eat. Somebody else can do the work. I don't want to do the work. So I was like, okay, works for me.
Yeah, not too shabby.
So you gave us some characters that sort of changed in the book. I would say changed in the fact that they had a nice growth arc. I love Anna Wong's growth arc. Do you have an Anna Wong in your life?
I don't, but I've sort of seen the agent track, you know, and it's definitely, any agent I've had has had an assistant, and they're always either going to move up or they're going to move out. And it's again another tough business. And the thing that I liked about her is that she has just sort of been beaten down by Chase, and then finally just goes, I'm done, you know, and she does the bold thing of asking, you know, Noah to take a chance on her. And I think that he's so impressed by the hustle and the chutzpah that he says yes. And you know, there are a couple of times when he doubts his decision, but for the most part, you know, I've seen those sort of you know, entry-level agents and the sort of scrappiness they have to have.
I agree, and it is definitely a career that you're either going up the ladder, or you're going to burn out, one or the other, because it's again, the creative world is so passionate about being creative, but it also creates such competition. It also can create self-doubt. You know, the number of things that we might question ourselves about is a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it is tough, and it's also, I think, when you're a performer, as you are, you put your whole heart and soul into it. And then if you get a bad review, as Noah does, it rips your soul out because you think, hey, I gave it my all, and you've now just sort of spit on it.
Right. Yes. No, and people ask me, is that really how it is? And that is exactly how an opening night is. And you're just in agony because you're just waiting for the Times review to come out. And I've had it when it's been great, and I've had it when it's been terrible. And when it's terrible, it feels so public. Like the shame is just, and people leave the party and everybody gets really quiet and awkward, and it's just awful. And and like Noah feels, I felt like, oh, now I've let everyone down and everyone's going to lose their job. And it's such an intense thing. And all before it happens, you have to do all of these interviews, and you have to do the red carpet, and you have to, sit down and tape segments. And it's just, meanwhile, your mind is going, is this going to blow up in my face?
And it's a competition once again, but it's also a competition for being the best, because if some turkey folds, it is often a collaborative effort. And it's not one person, but I think most creatives feel like it's their responsibility to make it, number one. Right. And as somebody asked me not long ago how something was gauged at being number one, and I said, well, it's just like being on the New York Times bestseller list. One person isn't going to be number one forever, but if you were number one time, that's all it takes. So,
right,
just roll with it. Roll with the good, lift up the good. So,
yeah.
So one thing that I think, if a person grew up in Chicago or New York or Los Angeles, they may not see as closely as a person who grows up in a small town is, and that's a town's perception. I'm always, gossip can be such a cruel and horrific thing where one wrong word can really sink a ship. But then you did something, and sort of the opposite is you created a telephone network of one right word.
Right.
In sort of rehabilitating Sue's reputation.
Yeah.
And I find that that's something about a small town that is such a blessing, because you can actually, in the right way, rehabilitate someone. And I loved that part of your book.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Nancy K has very few flaws, but gossip is her problem. And I think that was one of the, it was sort of a domino effect when, Noah meets Luke's mom, Sue, and realizes, she's great. She's smart. She gives him the best insight. And, and he says, Luke is, says people are not nice to her in this town. And Noah's like, well, I'm going to stop that. And, he has this arsenal, this weapon in his arsenal of Nancy K. And once she realizes what she's done, she's like, well, that is going to stop, and it's going to change, and I'm going to make sure of it. And so I think I tried to make sure that everybody has some sort of change or redemption. And I think that's really what happens for the mother character.
I like that. And it sort of happens for both mother characters in a way. I mean, Sue has she has become very happy with her world, and she sees her little bubble as right here. And yet, given the opportunity, she can expand her horizons. And that was a nice thing. And she does give Noah a note, which, I think anybody who's ever written a book or a play, getting a note from out of the blue is rarely liked at all. I mean, if I've asked you to read something and you give me some notes, I'm thrilled for them because I asked you. But when someone gives you a note out of the blue, it's very easy to dismiss that. But Noah doesn't. Noah hears what Sue says. He's actually listening to what she says. And I thought that was a very beautiful moment in the book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Did you have, I every time I ask this, I feel like it's like pick a favorite animal or pick a favorite child. But did you have a favorite character that you just absolutely were so thrilled to voice them?
I had so much fun with Jackie McNew, who's the outspoken twin, because she just does not let Noah get away with anything. And I just love how she's busting his hump the whole time. And in the end, you know, he apologizes and she accepts it and they come to a truce. And you know, it's she delivers it sort of escalates at first it's, you know, the Goneril Reagan, you know, cyborg thing, and then it's the eye gouging thing, but then it's the entire script and score and lyrics that are a problem. And she's the one that delivers the blow, which just makes him explode into a million pieces. But yeah, I don't know, I really love her for some reason.
I love that. I love that because I think, you know, that kind of character always moves the story along anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
And it also gives the protagonist a wee bit of comeuppance. It's like, okay, Mr. Big Pants, you are Big Pants, but still, not everybody sees you the way you see yourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wonderful. Again, the book is called Showmance. Chad, do you have a website or social media you'd like to share with the audience?
Sure. On Instagram, I'm at Chad Beg, and my website is chadbeguelin.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, Chad. This was such fun.
Oh, thank you. I had a great.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Out with Dan. You can find more information about this podcast and its host at outwithdan.com, on Twitter at outwithdan, and on Instagram and Facebook at GoOutWithDan. This podcast is hosted by Authors on the Air Global Radio Network, and the theme music is provided by bensound.com. Join us again soon for the next episode of Out with Dan.